All right. Good afternoon, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, and staff. The lobby is open and the recording has begun.
Thanks, Dustin. Good afternoon, everybody. We will convene the Executive Management Team meeting for Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. Our first item is approval of the minutes from our January 12th Executive Management Team meetings. Motion to approve?
This is Ali. I move approval.
And second and approved. Thank you. Our first presentation comes from our CFO, Jim Morgan, for an update on our Cannabis Central Reporting System. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Postman. The CCRS project is moving right along and still making great progress. We are in a transition period right now. We are wrapping up the original scope of work and completing the work that was originally planned. As I have mentioned before, through the process of implementing the system, we have learned new things and discovered things that we would like to have changed, or that the industry would like to have changed. So at the same time we're wrapping up the original scope, we are planning for what we've begun to call phase 2 of that implementation. For the original scope, we had a successful implementation yesterday of a series of technical fixes. All of the fixes that we're doing right now affect the system behind the scenes and are not affecting the files that licensees are required to upload. We have saved those, and we have a number of changes that may affect what they have to supply us, but we're going to be evaluating those as part of our phase 2 and trying to do those as much as possible in one fell swoop to minimize the impact to industry. So technical fixes were deployed yesterday. The critical batch of the first batch of reports, the most important reports, have been completed and are commencing the user testing phase. So that is nearing completion as well. To date, 86% of licensees have accessed the system. Our efforts on the education and enforcement side are focusing on the remaining 14%. Our enforcement staff are reaching out to them either by phone or in person to ensure that they are aware of the system and know how to get help to use the system as required. They have a plan for a series of contacts with each licensee for the next month and a half or so, and beginning April, they'll start more of an enforcement posture on that. By then they will have contacted every licensee more than once to make sure that they're aware of what's expected. So phase 2 planning is underway. I believe I mentioned before that we recognized there was a big enough body of work left that that's been identified since we went live that we would really like to address. So we're attacking that almost as a second project because of a competition for internal IT resources. We have hired a contract project manager to lead that effort, and we'll be focusing on 2 primary areas. One that we've talked about here before, and that's the inefficiencies with the manifest process. We have scheduled a meeting with select stakeholders, licensees, integrators, labs that we've invited to a meeting for March 1st. We'll be presenting some of our thoughts and also getting their input, and then we'll be starting to work on solutions to that process. The other main body of work for phase 2 will be getting our arms around all of the different change requests and issues that have been identified since we've gone live that have not yet been addressed. So that process will be to evaluate all of those and then develop a scope of work for phase 2. For the time being, we're continuing to use internal IT resources to support that effort, to support the project manager that's leading that. And we're prepared to bring in other contract resources as necessary to support that process. One other issue that has come up that's a kind of a separate focus, I don't believe it's going to be a large effort and will ultimately get worked into our scope, is we have discovered that there's some unique issues for tribes. And that is because their requirements for reporting are different from licensees' requirements for reporting. And that is they're not required to report as many things to us as licensees are. Their reporting focuses primarily on transactions between the tribe and licensees. So there are other information that we do gather from licensees, like the total snapshot of their inventory. The tribes aren't required to send that. So we've discovered that there are some processes in the upload process that are checking for, they were built for the 1,800 licensees that are using the system, and doing an error check to make sure that they've supplied all the required reports. And the unintended consequence for tribes was that they get the same error checking for their upload, but a report that's not there because they're not required to submit it is missing. So we have a meeting queued up tomorrow. It was members of the Suquamish tribe that brought this to our attention, and we're meeting with their technical folks tomorrow to get a clear understanding of what those issues are, to make sure that we can address those issues. That's about it. Things are moving right along. We are gearing up to continue to make our improvements in phase 2, and things are going well.
Good, thanks. Couple of quick questions on the manifest. So, you told us before that it was working, but just inefficient for licensees, and you're committed to trying to find a way. So is that part of phase 2, that work to just improve that, or is that end of phase 1?
That will be one of the major efforts for phase 2.
Okay.
It's going to be a big enough effort, we believe, that it was one of the drivers for saying we need to really dedicate resources for this phase 2.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the work that education enforcement have been doing with outreach, and I think last time it was 80%, now we're at 86. I'm going to assume there's going to be some chunk who is going to need more hands-on visit or something to really understand. And I just want to make sure that as we continue working to improve the system and implement phase 2 and find problems, our enforcement and education approach will have to adjust as well, right?
Yes.
If we have a piece that we feel really confident is working well, we can have I think a pretty strong expectation that the licensees are doing it, right?
Absolutely. And everything I've heard from our enforcement and education division, it just feels like a really reasonable approach. Yeah. They want to make sure that the expectations are clear, and that's the phase we're in right now. That we're setting reasonable expectations, and that at some point, if people still aren't responding in the way that's expected, then it's we've ruled out the technical issues, we've ruled out being unaware, and then they'll take appropriate steps from there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that's I think the message I want to make sure our licensees have is that we're not looking to try to enforce something that it's still a work in progress. We're looking at the pieces that either we just haven't heard from these folks, they haven't accessed the system at all. That remaining 14% hopefully continues to shrink. Yeah, I have no doubt enforcement and education are going to be reasonable about that. And just, I'm hoping every day more licensees go ahead and access it and get in the system. And then if they have the problems, at least then we know what they are.
Exactly.
Because now who knows? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Any questions, Ollie? Anything? Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Keep it up. Appreciate it. Thanks for the update. We're going to move around on the agenda a little bit because we have some people hopefully joining late. So we're going to skip over the legislative update right now and go to a licensing update with licensing director Becky Smith.
Well, good afternoon.
Good
So I'm
afternoon.
actually going to start with a little about CCRS because we have
Great.
seen a increase in our customer service emails and phone calls from last year at this time. That we've responded to about 312 emails that compared to 170 last year, and some of them are connected with CCRS. So we're connecting those folks to the right people that we're sending those emails on. So we hope, I hope when I come back to report out in the next few weeks, we'll see a decrease in the number of folks reaching out to our customer service staff. So with that, I also wanted to, as you remember, in December, we made some changes to our alteration with cannabis. That what we found out was that we had a couple of forms and 2 forms was too many, that we've combined those forms, and we heard from our licensees that was just, it was confusing. We've combined it to 1 form. It's simple. It's a lot of yes and no questions, but it clarifies the difference between what's a simple change request and what's an alteration that needs an investigation. And so that way that our customer service staff are able to get those where they need to go, whether it's to a licensing investigator in cannabis or it's customer service. Again, we're processing those easy alterations within days. I mean, the difference for our cannabis licensees, I'm hoping that when we go back out and do do a survey, that we hear that that's making a big difference for them. We know, we can see it in our charting, our data pool, that the timelines have really changed.
That's great. Good. Thanks for doing that.
So for liquor, I did want to share, that I rarely share about new places that are opening, but I did want to share about, there's a new proposed Seattle Mariners event center that's going to be built, and now it's the empty Pyramid Brewing facility outside across from T-Mobile. This facility will have a brewery, 250-seat restaurant, and an event space for capacity of 800, as well as outdoor dining area. But I think that's what's most significant to mention here is that the brewery will be operated by Matier Brewing. That's they're recognized as Washington's first African-American owned brewery.
Oh, great. Do you know when that's happening?
Well, they just reached out to us a few weeks ago, so it's going to be it'll be a few months until they open, but we'll keep you updated. I think that, as they said, it's an exciting, it's exciting that they're able to take over that empty pyramid, because we do see businesses closing all the time. And so to know that we have a big venue like that reopening again is pretty exciting.
Yep, good.
The liquor unit is also currently reviewing the criminal history process with the ultimate goal of streamlining the current WAC and bringing it into line with recently revised process for cannabis. As you know, we revised the cannabis criminal history process, so we're looking at doing that for liquor as well, and ultimately to improve timelines for our licensees. And then our alcohol impact areas, the city of Everett reached out for some guidance on their upcoming 5-year review at the end of this year. They have also inquired about adding additional products to their banned product list. The team, Kim Sowers, who is fantastic, has presented in front of the board several times. She's meeting with them and helping them to figure out what they want to do and how to get them to a space to add those added banned products or to provide some education to them. And then the team is also working with enforcement to provide RVP training to the liquor enforcement staff. This training will cover RVP, AVN process, as well as to go over the program requirements, what to check at the premise, and educational materials that enforcement can utilize when talking to licensees. Anything that we can do to help our enforcement staff and provide more education. As you know, that new folks are coming on all the time, and we want to make sure that whatever licensing can do to help in providing more education is where we definitely all want to be on the same page. And then I do want to mention a bit about 1480. I know I talk about it every time about that extended liquor COVID allowances. That we did receive some feedback again about the temporary added endorsement application. That I think that the one thing that in licensing, that when we do receive feedback about our application process, whether they say it's too complicated, that we don't know where these forms are, that we do listen. So we modified the form to allow for the applicant to file for one or all three endorsements on a single application. That way they're not having to fill out 3 different applications, and that's already done. The team has also extended the online resources on our external website. A big thanks to Communications for helping us with that. It includes information about food requirements, outside service areas, for instance, that we, like I said, we heard feedback that it was hard for our customers to find, that they didn't know, it was difficult to find the location of where the form was housed. And so Communications was very responsive to us and helped us right away to make those changes.
Great.
And I think that's, one last update. I always want to mention what we're doing with our social equity work. And so I do want to let you know that a webinar for community rules, education, and engagement orientation is going to take place on February 17th. That Kathy Hoffman and her rules group is heading that up. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. to give access to more folks that will be available to listen in. And we've also updated our website, our social equity website. We want to provide those updates often. And so, for folks that have questions, for folks that want to hear more about what's going on with the social equity work, they can go to that website and access and see what's happening right now. We also have included on that website the task force recommendations. What's yet to come is our response to those recommendations, which we're working on right now, as you know, and we'll be providing, people will be able to see, our community will be able to see those updates soon.
Good. Great.
I think that's it. Questions?
One quick one just on the allowances. I'm just curious. Any sense yet? Are we seeing people sort of reapplying to keep doing what they're doing? Are you seeing any surge of new interest, or do you think we're going to see a lot more of that than we have had? Or
I think we'll see a lot more of it. Right now, folks are still able to do what they've always done. I think that when we get to the point of saying, you're no longer going to be able to do this without an endorsement, then I think that's when we'll see a surge, because we have about 10,000 licensees that are eligible to apply, and we've only seen we've seen probably 500.
really?
So
Okay.
there's still a number of licensees that have to go in to add that endorsement.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any questions? I don't see any. So great. Thank you, Becky. Appreciate that. We'll see you next time. Our Enforcement Education Director, Chandra Brady, is out today, so we're going to skip that too on our agenda and go to a communications update from Communications Director Brian Smith.
Good afternoon, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. Just hitting on a couple of things on the media front. Last time I reported, I said it had been kind of consistently kind of slow, but this has been a very busy month on the media end of things. One of the top stories is ones that you guys would be familiar with about robberies at retail stores. I think probably in the last couple of weeks, I've talked to all the TV stations and the radio stations about how the LCB, works with retail stores and what our relationship is as opposed to local law enforcement. We had issued a message out to all licensees a couple of weeks ago stating to them things that they can do, bringing up the problem, understanding that we acknowledge it and share their concerns, but also some steps that they can be able to do to stay safe for themselves, for their customers, for their staff. That's generally been positively received. We keep hearing most of the times when I'm talking to these reporters, they had heard from people that had contacted them. We've heard that the Canada Business Association had a list of people that, or a list of stores and robberies. We still have not seen that list. It has not been shared with us, but so that organization, or representatives at least, have been speaking with those news orgs. Followed up, Matt Driscoll, he's the opinion page editor now for the News Tribune, but he was also a columnist, did kind of a big piece that ran in a weekend edition of the News Tribune a couple of weeks ago about that. And I thought fairly cleared out the issue. The bottom line of the stuff is the problem with cash, which we know, and it is a real public safety concern. And as you know, Chair Postman's guest editorial had run in the Olympian and the News Tribune, which I'm sure you've seen. Ollie, that's still up there. That's been up there for over a week, and I know is getting some attention along those lines. So I've also been speaking with the Associated Press, a reporter that's doing an in-depth piece into synthetically derived THC. That's ongoing. Continued to speak with him yesterday. And I think he's reaching out to Jillian at CANRA to get some additional information. But there's something coming from him, and spent quite a bit of time with him over the last couple of weeks, helping him understand. And he's been exploring the issue, I think, in depth. So just kind of moving outside of that into some of the things that we're active in. I hopefully you guys took a look at, go ahead, Ollie, got a question? Comment?
Yeah, somebody said something to me yesterday that the LC, at these stores, that the security people cannot have a gun or a weapon, and that was a LCB requirement. Is that correct?
I wish Chandra was here to be able to help fill that out. You can have armed security in the store. That can happen. Okay. That came directly from enforcement that we shared with our people. I think that the conflict comes with around what is a licensee able to carry on the premises, because there's conflict between federal constitutional right to have, a gun on the premises, but also state law, which prohibits certain things along those lines. And so it's more of a conversation that we have with our licensees about weapons in the place, but you can have armed security within the retail stores.
Okay.
Even the gun, like whether a clerk can have a gun there, is that's in statute, or is that in rules?
It's in statute.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's not us saying that's state law thing that prohibits that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
I hopefully you guys took a look at we launched the new newsletter and to both the cannabis industry and the alcohol industry. Followed the tool that the governor's office actually had been using for some time, which is Medium, which is going to work a lot better for us. I think the graphics look really, they look good. It's easy to read. We've had some positive feedback on that. And so both of those are out. Ollie, if you're interested, or if you haven't seen it yet, I'll be sure to share that with you. Working with the licensing division on a communication plan for social equity and what this is going to look like with our work for the coming year. Ollie, I know you'll have some interest in that. Let me get that together, which I hope to get done by the end of the week. Have a conversation with Becky and her team about that, and I'll be happy to share that with you for your feedback and what we might be able to do in addition or change or get your thoughts. And then, I'm working on a number of things that you heard some of the others talk about, whether it's with Jim and the projects on CCRS and SMP, continuing to work on with, I told you about the social equity stuff. Rick is doing a presentation next week to the regional chapter of the National Highway Transportation Safety Association, and I'm working with he and Mary on what that presentation will look like. So we've got a lot going on, as always, in a number of different pools, but things are moving along smoothly. Are there any questions, additional questions?
No, not for me. No, thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
I'll do it for now. Thank you. Appreciate it. Tony Hood, Deputy Director for a General Agency Update.
Good afternoon, Chair Postman and Member Garrett. Just a quick update today on SMP. We are currently interviewing project managers for the project, and we've interviewed a couple and have a few more coming next week, hopefully. It's our main priority to get a project manager on board full-time. We always intended to hire a contractor to help us with the project, in addition to the, they're almost sub-project managers within the agency. For example, Glenda will stay on the project and be very active in it, but she won't be the lead project manager. So we're continuing to interview for that position. Becky, Jim, George, and Jill are all helping me with that panel. So that gives us a nice wide range of background and perspectives to pick that person, because it's really important for our project that we get the right person. We are also working on the RFP for the integrator. That's the second priority right now. And we have a lot of people working on different pieces of that. Matt has done a great job of outlining different pieces of the RFP that can be done by different groups, so we can move forward together on that. Finally, the last thing is that we have 5 conditions that we need to meet for the OCIO before we can relaunch. And some are due at the end of April and some are due at the end of May. And so we've started working on those. That includes things like an amended investment plan, an amended readiness assessment report from our QA. So they're all things we anticipated. And some of those things, interesting, you can't prepare too soon. For example, the readiness report, you want to be prepared close in time to the submission. Otherwise, we don't get credit, if you will, for all the readiness we're doing. So we have a great plan on that, and we'll just continue forward. But otherwise, everything is quiet on the operations front. You know, just lots of people are being interviewed for various internal positions, lots of great hires, I know. But other than that, pretty quiet on the operations.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Rick Garza, Director, will give us his comments. And also Chris Thompson, our Legislative Director, is deep in legislative business, so he wasn't able to make it. So I've asked Rick to just hit some highlights of what he and Chris and others have been working on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett. Yeah, I'll just cover some of the highlights for Chris. I probably wouldn't know all of it, but the ones that are, of course, of interest to us. Our 2 agency request bills, House Bill 1859, which is the lab bill, just cruised through the House very easily. I think it had 1 dissenting vote in the Appropriations Committee. I think it rolled out 32-1. Also, House Bill 1668, our THC cannabinoid bill, moved out of committee 22-11, which is a good vote. There were several amendments, 5 that I recall, attempts to amend the bill, even a striker to place 5567, which was the walk-up proposal in the Senate for THC cannabinoid, onto our bill, was not successful. There is an odd amendment that was placed on it to require that legislators appointed by the legislature be consulted as we do rulemaking on this bill. And so we'll take another look at that closely. Obviously, we don't believe that's necessary. Legislators and staff are always available to join us in rulemaking. In fact, many legislative staff, both caucus staff and committee staff, are notified through our distribution of our rulemaking. So they're well aware and can be as involved as they wish in the rulemaking, policy, or anything else of the board. So that's an odd amendment to be placed on the bill. We'll see where that goes. House Bill 2022, the Social Equity in Cannabis Bill of Representative Wicks, very close vote in appropriations, 17-16 out of committee. We're continuing to work with Representative Wicks on that proposal. Obviously want to see that move forward. Been strong supporters of that. So we'll continue to work on that. In fact, working on it, as you know, today. House Bill 1827, the governor's executive request bill, the community reinvestment program, had a great vote out of appropriations, 28-5, and obviously provides 125 million for community reinvestment. Probably, you know, I think I look at all the cannabis bills, the more significant proposal to actually move money back into the communities that were harmed on the war on drugs. So that appears to be doing very, very well. And then I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add, but I certainly would take any questions. A lot of, you know, I want to commend Chris and the work that he did. That appropriations committee worked all Saturday, and then yesterday, or on Monday, my goodness, most of the day trying to get our bills out. We were very successful in moving and defeating many of the amendments that were brought against our proposal. Also, the committee was able to repeal some of the, or disapprove many of the amendments that came to the social equity in cannabis legislation. So we'll see where that moves forward, but the good thing is our bills are moving forward. The bills that we've supported are moving forward in the cannabis space. And a couple of proposals that we did not support, the reorg of the board, also the other THC proposal that came from WACA, both did not move out of committee. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Yeah, no, you know, I would just add on the question of, you know, being able to stop some of those amendments. At the same time, we were open to other changes to the legislation, and you and Chris both worked hard over the weekend with staff and legislators to figure out what they really needed to build their confidence in a couple of, you know, small areas around the THC bill in particular. And so I was glad to see that there is an openness to improving the product for sure. We would, you know, continue to resist something that would flip it, you know, as much as some of those amendments would. So I think that progress is really encouraging. I on the question of, you know, the formal invitation to legislators to participate in rulemaking, I think we would all welcome legislative engagement there. They're welcome today. If we need to find a way to better communicate that with them, we can. You know, we have a pretty robust process of those listen and learn sessions and deliberative dialogues, depending on the issue, and people learn a lot from those. And I think we would all benefit from having legislators part of that. So there's no resistance on our part to have them engage there. I'm not sure that belongs in statute to do that. So I'm hoping we can work that out as the bill goes along. And, you know, I know that Member Garrett is so much more knowledgeable on the social equity piece, so I don't know if she has anything to add. You know, that bill's a work in progress, and there's a lot of questions coming up, and for the most part, people seem to be really open to trying to improve it. And I would just say, from my perspective, what I've told members just is we want a bill that that we can really implement. You know, and that doesn't have some unreasonable expectation from one way or the other. So hopefully we're going to get there. It's sort of a surprise to me that it's as strong as it is today, because we didn't hear much about it prior to the session that this, you know, piece of legislation would be coming. So you know, I don't know if you wanted to add something there, Member Garrett, but.
No, I agree with you. And one of the things I was saying to Rick this morning, that we have to stay focused on doing and putting together something that we know is doable.
Yeah.
That just listening, yeah, there are some loud voices out there, but we have to be the ones to look at everything that's being said. We have the same goals for the same outcome.
That's right.
That we are focused on putting together what we know is doable. And that's doing the right thing. So,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And I think there's a growing consensus about what that right thing is, about, you know, how to handle licensing and the importance of that in this social equity effort that's going on. And that's progress right there, right? We're at least talking about how best to do this, not whether or not to do it. And so I'm optimistic. I'm gonna remain so until the end. I think this is a bill that we're going to see bubbling along until the final days. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Rick, to add?
No, thank you,
No.
Chair
Okay,
Postman.
great. Thank you. Appreciate that. That takes us through the agenda. One, I'll just give staff a second here. If we missed anybody or there's anything to add, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll call on you. And other than that, well, we wait a second to see. Member Garrett, anything else to ask or say? No? Okay, great. Well, with that then, we will adjourn early today. Hopefully next time we'll have a full slate and can get into some of the details on the session, which will be very far along at that point. So looking forward to that. Great. Well, thanks everybody on the team for your reports today. Keep up the good work. Always appreciate that. And we will adjourn the executive management team meeting for February 9th, 2022. Thanks, everybody.